definitely has changed, become a lot more sophisticated now, and you kind of seen like the rise of these giant behemoth labs out there. I have a lot of respect for a lot of these labs like Glidewell and what they're doing,
absolutely.
and Dandy is doing some incredible things, NDX, but even still the local labs. I mean, everything, whether it's a local lab or one of the large ones that I mentioned, a lot of them have gone from the traditional using polyvinyl siloxane or hydrocolloid, and some people may even remember that, taking an impression, sending it out, getting the restoration back to just scanning and just shooting a file over and getting that restoration back and more accurate now in a lot of cases. In most cases, there may be some instances where you still need to use impression material, but I think and also it's also brought the cost down quite a bit from a lab standpoint. You don't necessarily have to worry about having it outsourced. I mean, some of a lot of it is done right here in the U.S., which is kind of nice. So these restorations are really built here, and you can kind of get different levels of quality. So depending on what a patient's the insurance will provide or what the patient is looking for, whether it's anterior or posterior restoration. There's so many options. And then of course, then you've got your in-office printing, which then takes it kind of a step further for certain things like clear aligners. You can do now you can do mouth guards, bruxers, so BruxGuard, all these things that you can actually print in the office. Digital scan, print it in the office, patient goes home with it. So even some of this you're not even sending out anymore. So yeah, there's some really awesome clinical solutions out there.
What's going on, everybody? John Stamper, excited to be back with you. Another episode here on Beyond the Operatory podcast, brought to you by the amazing team at Dental City. And we're going to have this is the second episode with Bill Neumann from Group Dentistry Now. And our first episode, oh, you waved, okay. I thought you were like cut. Like,
no.
Okay, he's waving. I love it. All right.
Saying hi.
In the first episode with Bill, it was great. He covered a lot of kind of his perspective on where the industry is, and I would advise you to go back and watch that. Bill spent a lot of time knowing and understanding the DSO space, but it's interesting. If you're a private practice watching this, I think you're going to have a lot of takeaways in that episode of maybe you want to just be a smaller 3 to 4 practice multi-group, and I would encourage you to get some insights from that, because it very well could be something that could be in your future, and there was a lot of knowledge there. We ended that last episode with kind of where the future's going and what Bill's insights are around, again, some of these smaller emerging groups. And what we were both excited about is what it means in regards to resources that you all have out there now in an effort to be able to run maybe some smaller groups or your practice with all the great companies that are out there. And so Bill spends a lot of his time not only understanding what's going on in the DSO space, but also a lot of time with the individual companies and kind of being that bridge through his company, Group Dentistry Now. So Bill, it's good to have you back.
Yeah, it's great to be back, and it was a great conversation. There's so many solutions out there and so many opportunities. And again, we talked a little bit about it in the last episode, tech overload, I think, product overload, solutions overload. So it's, we're going to kind of get into it. And I would say just don't get overwhelmed by it. There's a lot of great opportunity. Maybe focus on 1 or 2 issues or things that you're trying to solve for in the practice. And then I'm going to almost guarantee that there's probably a solution or 2 out there that's available now, whether it's a tech solution or whether it might not be tech. It doesn't have to be tech, and we can even talk a little bit about that. If things are working well the way we're doing it, do we really want to bring tech in? Maybe not.
Yeah.
There may be another area that you can improve.
Yeah.
Which tech may be a solution for, it may not be.
Yeah.
So it's not all tech. A lot of it is, but
completely. And I think what Bill and I want to cover on this episode is we want to almost create a little roadmap for you of all the different types of resources that are available to you. I will say, Bill, that in 2004, when I started dentistry, the very first trade show that I ever walked into was the Hinman Dental. And as someone that was new to dentistry, walking onto that trade show floor and seeing all the big banners and all the products, I can understand how a dental practice could both be excited about what is possible. I mean, you know this, dentists and hygienists and dental assistants, right? I mean, they work with their hands, they're gadget people, they love the tools. Like, it's just a part of the craft, it's a part of the trade. So there's always, I think, been an element of the excitement of using those things. But it is 2026 and the industry has, vastly grown. And so there are so many different resources out there, which can be a good thing. And when you said it can also be a little bit overwhelmed. So where I thought we would start, we talked a little bit about this in your previous episode, was around staffing. And so it's a challenge. And you mentioned that if, let's say, for example, you own one practice or two, and your roadmap for the next couple of years is to maybe have 5 practices, what you may not always be thinking about are the challenges that it may have in order to find the right people that you need in order to be able to operate that little group. So let's start there, and maybe what some of your insights have been with some of the different companies out there when it comes to outsourcing, staffing, and things like that.
Yep. So this is I'd say a relatively recent trend. Certainly something that we've seen an uptick in providers, people that are providing these outsourcing services. So what do we mean by outsourcing? So you've got someone, let's say, at the front desk, or you don't have someone at the front desk, but you need somebody to do certain things, or revenue cycle management, calling, insurance verification, taking calls. Call center is another example where your front desk staff is really busy. You want to take them off the phone, have them focus on treatment acceptance, free up time. So there are a couple of organizations out there. There's Reach, there's Support DDS. There are a lot of them that will provide offshore or near shore, they might call it. But English speaking, sometimes Spanish speaking, we need that as well, and especially in certain areas of our country. And so so you've got these outsourcing services, but what would you? I think I've talked to Corey at Reach, and I asked him the question. I'm like, so okay, what do I outsource? Like, what do I do first? And he's like, anything that really isn't patient facing. That's where you would start. So you think about maybe the calls. Like, is that patient facing? Well, you might be interacting with somebody on the phone, but you're not actually facing the patient. You don't need to have somebody there in front of the patient. Also, from a insurance verification standpoint, the calling, so somebody answering the phone call, so your front desk person is freed up to actually do the things, maybe like treatment acceptance, processing payments, so they could process the payment, take the patient back to the operatory and meet the hygienist. So it's something that you would consider back office. It wouldn't be patient facing. So I think that kind of makes sense. And you want to find a company that has people that speak English, so you wouldn't know that maybe that person is not necessarily in another country. And what are the benefits? You might say, well, first off, it's a lot less expensive. They've already vetted these people. They're really managing them for you. And if it doesn't work out, you don't have to do the firing, right? They'll let you hire them, so you can but they'll take you through the process. So I think it's a real interesting trend. I would say it's not probably for every practice, but it's certainly a solution. And if you're running into a situation where you can't find somebody at the front desk or answer phones, and also those missed calls. Maybe it's just you're outsourcing that missed call to a call center that is offshore. So how many missed calls? I think on average they say an average practice misses about 30% of all calls. That's a lot. If you could capture half of those, what does that mean for your practice?
Yeah, I mean, you look at it through the lens of an entrepreneur, you think about, those amount of calls and what that could mean for those patients. Not only that, but also your reputation in the community. I mean, as you know, Bill, when you think back at a time when there wasn't as many dental practices in a lot of these communities, and so you may not get through to that practice, but you're like, that practice is the only option, and so you're going to give them another chance. Well, now that you have the opportunity to just go right to another office, that missed 30% is
we're
a big
impatient.
deal.
We're impatient now. Consumers, we're used to Amazon. Everything in 2 days. We want a dental appointment. We want it tomorrow. So if I can't get through to somebody, I'm going to the person down the street, and then the next one until I get that appointment. And I think that also kind of ties into some other solutions we'll talk about This is not just having somebody picking up the phone, but it's also, having the ability to do scheduling online and things that, we always said, well, dentistry is different and we can't do that. Well, you can do it. And there are companies out there doing it. So there's a lot of great opportunities. And if we could just, again, maybe we focus on those 30% of missed calls.
Yeah.
Maybe that's all you need to do.
Yeah. Yeah, make a big difference. And then if you get those patients in, then maybe you need more of the technology solutions. But until then, solve that first. That's why we wanted to
Then
start
you need
there.
more staff. And
There you go. Yeah. All right. So I learned when I first came into dentistry, as I was sharing with you, I worked for Brasseler. I sold the NSK handpiece line, and I had the opportunity to work in a lot of practices, and I would demo the electric handpieces and all of that. But there was a quote that many dentists would share with me that has always stuck with me. And I would go in and I would demo electric handpiece, and they would maybe use it for the first time. And they would say to me, wow, I wish I would have known about this like 2 months ago or a week ago, because instantly they were like thinking about a patient that they had where they could have taken that product and they could have used it on. And so that always drove me over the years, Bill, to at the very least make sure that dental practices, who, as you know, are working with patients all the time, so they don't always have the time to learn about a lot of these companies, which is why, I know we structured this today for you, is because we wanted to at least go through here and just, have you share your awareness of these different categories and these different, these products and services and tech that are out there, because who knows, right? I mean, it could be the difference of like, I didn't even know that existed. It could have helped you solve a problem. And so that was kind of the whole idea of this. So I wanted to kind of start with, we talked about staffing, which I think was, a little bit different than tech and materials, but now we're going to get into some of the other pieces. Let's start with imaging and kind of go down that path. And what are you seeing there? Talk about the benefits of it. I mean, you work with a lot of these companies as well.
Yeah, I think obviously the technology's advanced, the costs have come way down. So I think there's a lot of great solutions out there. There's the companies that have been around for a long time, like the Dexuses of the world, and then there's some newer startups that are doing some pretty interesting things. So and not being a clinician, I don't necessarily have one's better than the other. I would say that from when I look at imaging software, things like this, imaging, anything clinical, maybe we could even talk about like 3D printing and clinical solutions, clinical technology solutions. I look at that as a recruitment tool too. So if I'm a young dentist coming in, and again, this goes back to staffing, right? The first thing we're talking about. A young clinician's expecting technology in the practices. So I think you've got to really kind of take a look at, whoever that partner is, you're really kind of looking for, the top solution, and also somebody that's got the education and the support that can help you train your younger clinicians as they come in. The other thing I'll say about imaging, and this kind of carries over to other equipment. I'll give like an example, Jazz Imaging, which does sensors. They have a really interesting model, and this is kind of a new model out there, and this ties into technology, but something that I would call like an operating lease. And this is relatively new to dentistry, but with group practices and DSOs in particular, and as it's solo, you might find this interesting too. We all a lot of us have leased vehicles before versus buying a vehicle. So it's a similar concept where you are getting whether it's something like Jazz with their sensors, you're paying a flat fee per month per sensor, and if it breaks, they send you a new one, right? They might try and troubleshoot to make sure that everything's okay, but it's DSOs and group practices like it because they know what their predictable expense is going to be. Every month it's going to be $10,000 a month. This is what we're going to spend on sensors versus, oh my gosh, broken sensor, $8,000. So you have these big cash outlays. And also if there's a problem, it's fixed because it's all part of the cost. So you're going to start to see more and more of these operating leases. There are companies out there that are doing them for full operatories. You get your chair, and you get everything that goes along with that, the cabinetry, and you're paying a monthly fee. And so there are actually operating lease companies, banks, financing this, where they're buying it for you and then leasing it back. So it's a really, really kind of interesting model, something to explore. You're going to hear more and more about it, I think, as this is going to become more and more common. And certainly the larger you are, and if you're really kind of looking at, my cash outlay, and you don't want to throw down $75,000 for, some type of, imaging or some cone beam, or it can be a lot more than that. You can do this on an operating lease where you don't have a big down payment. It's just a flat fee each month. And if you've got an issue, it's taken care of. And when the new technology comes in, because everything seems to change pretty quickly now, all of a sudden it's outdated and I'm stuck with it. Then I got to figure out a way to sell this. You don't have to. Your lease is done. You get the new best version of it.
There's a lot of parallels with that in regards to the practices being able to bring in technology with how they are also trying to help their patients get their care done, right? In the sense of, third-party financing. And so I think it's so often, it's the same type of transactions that are happening between a dental vendor and manufacturer and the dental practice is what the dental practices are trying to do with their patients. And I think we're seeing a trend of that, right? Of they're trying to get more creative in order to help the patients get the care done. And obviously the companies are trying to, do things like operating leases to get creative to help the practices bring this technology in, which is exciting.
Yep.
All right. How about digital labs? A lot going on in the lab space. It's gone through a lot of transformation over the years.
It really has a lot of consolidation, and it has become one of those. Did you ever call on labs when you were at
Oh, yeah,
Brasler?
of course I
Okay,
did.
so
Oh, yeah.
I did as well.
Going into a lab like in a small town where I would, those were the ones where actually like I could have an hour-long conversation with them because they could talk to me while they were doing their restorations.
Yeah, you'd come out and you're just covered in dust. Yeah, it was. It definitely has changed, become a lot more sophisticated now, and you kind of seen like the rise of these giant behemoth labs out there. I have a lot of respect for a lot of these labs like Glidewell and what they're doing,
absolutely.
and Dandy. He's doing some incredible things, NDX. But even still the local labs, everything, whether it's a local lab or one of the large ones that I mentioned, a lot of them have gone from the traditional using polyvinyl siloxane or hydrocolloid, and some people may even remember that, taking an impression, sending it out, getting the restoration back to just scanning and just shooting a file over and getting that restoration back and more accurate now in a lot of cases. In most cases, there may be some instances where you still need to use impression material, but I think and also it's also brought the cost down quite a bit from a lab standpoint. You don't necessarily have to worry about having it outsourced. Some of a lot of it is done right here in the U.S., which is kind of nice. So these restorations are really built here, and you can kind of get different levels of quality. So depending on what a patient's the insurance will provide or what the patient is looking for, whether it's anterior or posterior restoration. There's so many options. And then of course you've got your in-office printing, which then takes it kind of a step further for certain things like clear aligners. You can do now you can do mouth guards, bruxers, so BruxGuard, all these things that you can actually print in the office. Digital scan, print it in the office, patient goes home with it. So even some of this you're not even sending out anymore. So yeah, there's some really awesome clinical solutions out there.
It's pretty exciting. Speaking of aligners, I know another category you wanted to talk about was some of the orthodontic treatment solutions.
Yeah. This is kind of, so we see trends. You kind of touched on it. You talked a little bit about, I can't recall, was it this podcast or the one we recorded before? We were talking about, recall platforms. I think it might have been the one before this, where there's kind of like the first generation. And so when at Group Dentistry now, we see the trends because we have a lot of companies come to us, and a lot of times they're all doing very similar things. So you just see the trend because you can see the people that are looking to market this, ride this trend, or I don't even know, but it's fascinating. So we see a lot of, and this is because of the need in the space. So there's this focus on same-store sales growth. A lot of group practices and DSOs, and I'm sure you are probably out there as well, even if you have a solo, is you're like, hey, can we do more specialty in-house? Like, what more can I do for my patients that I'm not sending out to somebody else? Well, clear aligner therapy is kind of that natural. You might do a little bit of it. How do I get better? Well, there are companies out there that'll actually do a lot of the treatment planning for you. They'll do the scans. They're so easy now. I mean, they'll put everything together. They'll send out the aligners. They do everything. So we've seen these clear aligner companies that are out there. There's OrthoBrain, there's Two Front. There are probably a half dozen of them out there. Obviously all doing things a little bit differently. But I think that's especially if you feel you're a general practitioner, you're not an orthodontist. You may have some associates out there that would like to do some more, but maybe need a little bit of assistance. That's where you can really focus in on a partner that can kind of help up those skill levels of not just yourself, but some of the other, and just take off all that treatment planning and all the things that you don't have time to do.
Yeah.
So they really kind of handle all that for you.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's a big trend.
Yeah. All right, the next one is membership plans. I want to share a little story. So again, I spent some time working at Mortensen, a couple different stints, and I think it was like maybe my second stint there. I helped them build their own internal membership plan, and I remember how much work it took. I mean, that was all I was doing, was helping them build that.
Yeah, what year was this?
This was probably 2000 and maybe like 18.
Okay.
Yeah, 2018.
Yep.
I actually use that same plan today. So like my family and I, we all go to the Mortensen practices in Louisville. But it's perfect for an entrepreneur, for our dental care. And so I really love this as well. And I think you and I both agree, we saw this trend coming down the pipe as well. Right? I mean, it was not easy for a lot of these companies in the early days because of getting that mindset of like a practice having to kind of offer something that was not insurance, but they're making great progress, and they're helping a lot of patients.
And well, dentists don't like to sell anything, right? There's
Sure.
this sales is kind of a dirty word in dentistry, which it shouldn't be. But if you've got like these membership plans, you do have to have somebody present the membership plan, right? It's just like treatment acceptance. There's no difference. But yeah, I kind of found it fascinating, and maybe I just wasn't paying attention to it because I had my head kind of stuck in the clinical game, like you probably did, until you got mixed up on the membership side.
Yeah.
But think about it again from the consumer perspective, right? The patient's a consumer. It's not just about clinical outcomes. It's about how you deliver those clinical outcomes. And a lot of us go to gyms, right? We have a gym membership. We have a lot of different memberships where we pay a monthly fee, and it makes a lot of sense. Now in this case, we want people to come to the dental practice, unlike a gym membership where they hope you don't go. Right. But this is actually the opposite. I think the other thing it does is it provides steady cash flow. So let's say you've got John and family coming in to the dental practice, and maybe his membership plan for the family is $170 a month. So that is something that if you don't have a membership plan, you don't have that predictable cash flow every month. So multiply John and his family times, let's say you get 20% of your patients on a membership plan. So 170 times, well, let's say we'll do it individually. Let's say it's $35 times, whatever that number is, 250, 500 patients. I mean, that can add up really quickly. And again, that's guaranteed income every single month. So that's what I would say is like you've got that. So you kind of think about it from a small business perspective. It's like, okay, what number do I need there to kind of cover my overhead? And then maybe you could do that with your membership. Maybe you could go above that, but just really simply, and then anything else above and beyond, is profit. So I kind of simplified it there. And the cool thing is with solutions like Plan Forward, I know they're a partner of Dental City. There's others like Cleary out there, and several others that, you don't have to build one like John did for Mortensen.
There's a lot of work. They've already done that.
They've already done it all. And it is really effective. You can customize it so you can change the pricing. If you've got a couple locations, you have different packages in different locations. So if your patient base is a little bit different, you can kind of tweak it. So I think membership plans are one of those, I would say it's really a no-brainer at this point to offer something up like that. And now that you've got somebody that is building these out, there's no reason, why you should hesitate to do it. And if you've done one, maybe you've kind of tried to do one, internally, because I think a lot of people still kind of have some that they've done themselves. I think you should probably take a look at some of these off the shelf, because they are so highly customizable now and easy to use and manage.
Well, the other side of it that I learned, Bill, is the reason why there's such a benefit for these companies is because each individual state has their own insurance laws. And so a lot of the work that I had to do in building that based on the patients that are going to be served, because Mortensen had practices in multi-states, was that knowing and understanding like all the intricacies with the insurance program within those states. And so to your point, that's another thing that these companies, they've done that legwork,
Right.
They've consolidated it for you. You don't have to worry about it, which is really exciting. But all right, so we're going to stay along the whole line of, case acceptance and financing. Patient finance solutions. This is, there's a lot of them out there.
There are, this is another one that can be pretty overwhelming too. And I would say, most of us know Care Credit. We're probably, all using it in our practices to a degree or two. I think what you have to take a look at is, you have, Care Credit, where they're looking for people with, let's face it, really good credit, right? Somebody that may not even necessarily need patient financing, or maybe, just maybe not exceptional, but right, or they just don't want to pay for it right now, and so they qualify. But what about all those other people? And I think this gets into, where we are, fortunately or unfortunately, in 2026. We've got a lot of people that are challenged. We've got all sorts of geopolitical issues out there. We still have relatively high, interest rates. They've come down a little bit. You see some job loss. It's kind of uncertain times, I would say. It's probably safe to say, for there's a lot of different things going on all at once. So how are you gonna, when you look at treatment acceptance, one of the big things is, am I gonna be able to afford this? I can't pay for this right now. I don't have the money. I just don't have that money. I always hear this stat, people have, there's a certain percentage of people that only have like $500 in the bank or something crazy, and it's a pretty substantial, percentage of the population. So you hit somebody with a, $3,000 or $4,000 treatment plan, and they're like, not happening. So I think you need something for the, you've got your Care Credit out there, but for the people, we would call it a second look. So somebody that maybe has a lower than stellar credit score, there are other patient financing options out there. There are also platforms that you can go through and find out, like through an app. It's super easy, and you can get people pre-qualified, and then you can kind of take a look at the payment plans and what the interest rate would be, and then the patient can actually choose. And it's normally it's a pretty easy credit check. Sometimes they just need a driver's license, and then you can show them all on the iPad. They can sign up for it then and there and accept the treatment. So there are several out there. There's OrthoFi, who, just like it sounds, mostly focused in the ortho market. You've got, of course, Sunbit is one that is a big one that's out there. Alpheon is another one. So there are other solutions, and I would say that in conjunction with the membership plan really makes quite a bit of sense. You've got the membership plan that's kind of covering like the basics. You get your hygiene appointment. There's some discounts on the bigger. Is this the way it works for you? There's discounts on some of the bigger things, like if you're getting ortho treatment, maybe it's 10% off or save $1,000 if you're part of the plan. But for the big stuff, they still need to pay out of pocket, and this is where patient financing can really tie in.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so you touched on this a little bit in the first episode, but online scheduling. Man, I remember when this first came out, some of the fear and concerns of somebody else owning the schedule in a dental practice, a very sacred thing.
Yeah, it's always one of those. I was talking to an entrepreneur, clinician. She's a clinician, and she has a scheduling solution built into a platform, which we'll probably hit on a little later here, because I was pretty impressed by it. But scheduling online is something I think, as, again, clinicians, we kind of know the challenges that you can have, right, as a clinician in the audience. Scheduling, especially clinicians, like hygiene appointments might not be necessarily as difficult as like a restorative appointment, because we just don't know. And if you run over on one restorative, then it's this domino effect. So sometimes it's kind of hard to do hygiene's not too difficult. We know how long hygiene's going to take. So that is pretty easy to plug into a schedule. It's everything else that can be kind of funky. And then, of course, you get the dominoes and everything's delayed and throws off the schedule for sure. So it's like, how do you kind of figure that out? And this is where like AI kind of comes in, and I can kind of learn the trends in the practice and understand if you kind of go over a lot and can kind of figure in or build in those buffers into the schedule. But there are solutions out there. And again, as a consumer or a patient, we expect to be able to book things online like we do with everything else. We don't think about the things that we just talked about, like, oh, restorative sometimes goes over, and I'm a patient. I don't know. I just want to be able to do it. I want it easy. I want, I'm not. So if I can't get somebody on the phone because you don't answer 30% of your calls, I should be able to, get you. I should be able to do it online. And if you don't have scheduling online, and that other practice does, I'm probably just going to book it there. Sometimes I don't even want to talk to anybody. Like, have you ever done that where you're like, I don't want to talk to this person, I'll text them.
Yes.
So that's another thing too. We can kind of include that patient engagement into recall into the texting side of things, because you can do that too. You can actually do scheduling through text. But there's a couple. There's one I've seen. It was created by two dentists, Canadian dentists, called First In, which is pretty interesting. And then the other one that I've seen, which is built into a bigger solution, it's a company called Team Care. And Team Care actually has a scheduler, but that's just one of the things they do. They actually have a staff engagement, it's kind of a staffing management tool where you can reward staff, and they can kind of benchmark their goals, and they get to win prizes, and it's really actually it's pretty cool. So they've got a scheduler built in, and the solution looks pretty good. Some of the PMS systems have some schedulers that exist out there, but I think that's something you could take a look at. They're getting to the point where they're
good.
You can adapt.
Well, and I'm glad that you brought up there's the practice looking at the application of it, and then there's looking at it through the lens of the patient. It can be easy, as you know, Bill, to be able to look at it through the practice eyes. But you really do have to understand, and we're going to probably get into this with some of the other technologies, and actually Dr. Ed Lynn talked about this, where he was talking about bringing technology into the practice and really looking at it through the lens of today's consumer, today's patient, right? Like they think it's cool when they come in to a practice and they see that you've invested in a lot of these technologies. So
Dr. Lynn's podcast was great. I got a chance to sit in the audience when he did it live. It's awesome. A good one to check out.
He's awesome. All right, so here we go, Diagnostic AI. And we talked about this a little bit on the first episode with you, but this has been both exciting. These companies, all of them, have put a lot into education and awareness.
A lot of investment.
But that's a good point. Why do you think these companies had to put a lot of investment into this?
Well, first off, I think it was early days. So we talked about this 4 or 5 years ago as they were developing it. So I think AI was relatively new. So probably just to train AI, and costs were a lot higher then. And trying to prove a concept out, something that was totally foreign, it takes quite a bit. And you had with 3 or 4 companies kind of come in all at once.
Same time.
I think two of the founders were in the same class at Harvard, I think.
Yes.
So it's kind of interesting how that all played out. But the solutions are here, and they're really good now. I mean, this is, again, I would call it mainstream at this point. And I think there were some concerns, with dentists were like, Big Brother is watching me, and so that was maybe one of the concerns. I don't really hear much about that now. I think they look at it as, a tool to really help them, whether it's, just kind of a backup to say, hey, this is what I see with my eyes. This confirms it, or maybe I missed something. And that happens too. And then, of course, from just the patient side of things, you can show the patient. I know when sometimes somebody shows me an X-ray, and they're like, "Oh, you see here?" And I'm like, "I don't see anything. Like, I don't know what you're talking about." But if it's color coded and it's red, and it's just like, okay, color, it works. So you can use it, I think, as a treatment acceptance tool, or to confirm, kind of what you're telling the patient.
Well, and I talk a bit about this a lot. You and I have been in dentistry for a long time, and we have watched how many continuing education courses clinicians have taken on the words to say to get a patient to say yes when they're doing case acceptance.
Right.
And almost to the point where for years, knowing what we know and how important it is for these patients to get this care done, but they just weren't doing it, I would feel bad for clinicians. I would feel bad, right? Like it would be like, oh man, like, come on, patients, like just get,
Right.
and
Can't you see
and
this?
they would be trying to do all this different work to try to convince them to get this care done or what have you. Then all of a sudden stuff like this comes along. And it's the analogy that I like to use, Bill, which is, when you go to get your car done, if you're not a mechanic and you're asking them to tell you what's wrong, and they come out and they tell you on a piece of paper and you have no clue about that engine, it's all trust, right? You have no visual, you have no idea. And dentistry has been the same. These tools, I think what's exciting, and you brought it up, they change that because it does really kind of put it back in the patient's court to be able to make that judgment and see that, wow, that's my mouth, like that's the problems that I have, okay. Less pressure off of the clinician to convince and more of the technology. So
Show, don't
pretty
tell.
exciting. Exactly. All right, so we'll stay a little bit on the AI side. We touched on this a little bit about staffing challenges, but how about some of the front desk AIs?
A lot of them. This is where the tech overload comes in. I mean, if you're, at a trade show, you'll see AI everywhere. So when I say trade show, if you're at Chicago Midwinter or any of it, probably even like the local meetings, you talked about Hinman, which is more of a regional in the Southeast. And I was not there, but I was at Yankee, and I can only imagine that there had to be 30 or 40 AI companies.
Yeah.
Just a guess. I bet you it was a lot more.
Yeah.
That's just me guessing. And a lot of them are doing, I wouldn't say they're all doing the same thing, but similar things. And this is where it gets kind of murky. And you don't have the time probably to go through every single company to try and figure out which is the best solution. Of course, they're going to tell you that most likely that theirs is the best solution for you. But from a front desk AI perspective, you've got a couple different categories or types of solutions. One is you've got somebody at the front desk that's actually answering the phone, right? There's inbound calls, there's outbound calls, and you might have a solution like a Patient Prism or a Peer Logic that is monitoring those calls. And so again, a little bit Big Brother, but they know ahead of time, they being the patient, you have to disclose to the patient, number one, that the call is being monitored. I mean, just like when we call, this phone call might be monitored for quality assurance.
I've got a lot of recordings on me, for calling customer service.
Right. When your airline your flight's delayed or something. So you've got that, and then of course you want. So you've got that, and so your front desk person is, whether it's treatment acceptance or whether they're trying to book an appointment, you can kind of give them feedback. So you listen to the call. Okay, this is how you handled that call. Was there a booked appointment? Did they accept treatment? All those things can be monitored. You can put a script in front of them, so that can actually be included in the the Peer Logic or the Patient Prism solution. So that's one level. And then you've got the other, which is, the AI voice, or it could be AI that responds if you miss a call. So we talked about the 30% number. Somebody calls, you're not there, right? There's nobody that picks up. One of two things, it rolls over to a call center. You could do that. You could have an AI voice go, hi, this is whatever, and try and kind of go through things that way, and they're getting better and better. So it's an AI voice actually picks up the call. And some of them can actually schedule. Some of them can tell, whether the insurance, they can verify the insurance. It's really interesting. You can still kind of tell that it's AI, but people might not mind. And I think the longer and longer and the better it gets, the less people will care. The other is that it rings, people don't pick up, and they say, hey, we'll text you back. We can handle this by text. Well, the text is AI. So now the text is conversing via text with them, and sometimes you can schedule, verify everything that way. I know I like text. I don't like to talk to people sometimes on the phone now. So maybe that's a better way to communicate. So you kind of have the text, you've got the AI voice, and then you've got the call monitoring. So there's a lot of different solutions. There are a lot of them out there. And a ton of companies doing each or all of the above. I think what you want to do in order to evaluate this, because I think it's a great solution. Well, number one, is it a problem?
Right.
Like, if it's not a problem, then right now maybe focus on
Shiny object.
something that is,
Yep.
and don't worry about this right now. But if you feel like, hey, this sounds like it's something that we could use, then I would start to vet out these companies. And what I would say, find out, who are they working with? Like, are they working with somebody like me that has 1 location, 7 locations, general dentistry, specialty, whatever? Get those case studies. Talk to your peers. We've got these great Facebook groups now, and you throw a name out there and people will let you know. So there are a lot of, talk to Dental City. I mean, Dental City has partnerships with AI companies. Talk to them. They vetted these companies. And, the nice thing is you kind of have the support of a Dental City, because that's the other thing. It's like, are they going to be able, as a company, support you? The other thing I would say with all these technology companies is, there are a lot of them, and not all of them are going to be around in the next 4 or 5 years. So how do I know? Like, how do you know if that company is going to be around? It could be a great solution. A lot of them are venture capital backed. They are. So what it means is somebody's funded them, whether it's a fund or it could be private funding, but they're funding the idea, which means they're not making money right now. So they've got to get to a certain level before they're profitable. And a lot of the tech companies are like that. So then you kind of look at solutions out there, and I think it's probably on my list of things when you're trying to determine how to kind of choose solutions. Maybe I'm jumping ahead of myself here. But what I would say is there are at least 3 dental-specific venture capital funds in the industry. I think it's probably a good point to talk about this. Yeah. Which you probably like. It's
important to know.
So we all probably know what the venture capital is, or you've heard about it before. So VC invests in pretty much technology companies' ideas. Typically, they're not profitable yet. So they're investing something that's could be a home run, an incredible new solution. So VC will come in and fund it while it's not profitable. But at the end of the day, a lot of these companies, fizzle out, and it's just they're not the best, or the technology is not the best. What I like about these dental-focused VC funds, Dental Innovation Alliance is one. You have Revere Partners, which is another, and there's DDS Founders Fund, I think it is. Those are the 3 that I know. There's a couple others. These are a lot of times dentist founders that are the limited partners, which means they're the investors, and they're only investing in dental companies. So they're vetting these solutions out, and there probably are also the customers of these companies. So I would take a look and find out, if you're going to go with, especially a startup company, okay, how new are you? How long have you been around? Where are you getting your money from? I think that's another valid question. These big DSOs do this, and a lot of them will actually fund these startup companies too, because they love the solution, but they don't want to have all their practices using a solution, and all of a sudden the company goes out of business, and they're like, what do we do? So a lot of times, like a Heartland, for example, will stand up one of these tech companies. So I think just, again, there was a lot there, but what I would say is, it's important to know where they're getting their money from. Are they going to be around for the long haul? Case studies. That's especially with tech companies, because you don't want to get burnt.
Here's the cool thing about where we are, and I'm so glad that you brought this up. We are in a time where we have the resources, or the dental practices have the resources, to go out and do some research on these companies, right? I mean, whether it be social media or, now with AI.
Yeah, just put it in chat.
Just put it in chat and start to ask.
Who's funding this blah, blah, blah company?
I mean, I spend a lot of time in this work. I mean, I spend a lot of time working with companies, ensuring that they are creating content about who they are, a lot of the things that you talked about, because it's important. And I think, if they're doing that, and you bring up a good point, which is if a company is investing in who they are and they're getting it out there, it doesn't mean that something bad couldn't happen and they couldn't be around. But the companies that do that typically, as you know, Bill, find a way to stay around, because they know the importance of the long game. They know that this is not just about being in a market for 6 months or a year or 2 years. Like, they want to be here for a while, which is why I think when we look at some of these diagnostic AIs, it is cool to see, when you said they're mainstream, they've kind of hit that big point, right? I think it's been proven
Right.
that they had to put a lot in the game to stay into the game,
Yeah.
which says a lot about those organizations.
Yeah, 100%. And again, kind of back to, I think just when technology beyond like, are they funded? And it's like, also, are they going to be able to support you through training?
Yes.
So that's the other thing. This is going to be new to your front desk person or whoever, or the clinician if we're talking about diagnostic AI. So make sure they've got a proven onboarding program, whether it's one clinician or one front desk person, or whether it's 20 or 30. I mean, if you have a lot of locations, you always want to pilot these things. So you're not going to roll it out to all 10 of your locations.
Yep.
Test it out with if it's a front desk person, somebody who's really good and somebody that can actually vet this for you. And if it's a clinical product, again, it's a really good clinician that can poke holes in, the solution, and then have them pick apart the training and how they were onboarded too.
All right, so I think a good place to bring us home. We've talked about a lot of technology. What technology does is it opens up the doors for sometimes negative things to happen. And so that's why I thought we'd kind of close with cybersecurity.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe even should have started with that, but I did not want to leave before we had you talk about that a little bit, because it's a real deal. Patients' records, all of these newer technologies, with each one of them is a potential digital portal into the practice. And so what are you seeing there? What are companies doing? And maybe some final thoughts on that.
Yeah, cybersecurity. Well, this is the thing that nobody, it's kind of like,
It's not sexy.
no, it's like insurance. Nobody, you have to have it, but you don't want to pay for it. So this is, and we've seen breaches with some, one of the biggest distributor in the industry had a breach a couple years back now, not too long ago. We see them, we do a cyber watch article every single month. We've been doing it for the past 2.5 years. So we try and track healthcare. So it's not just dental, but healthcare breaches. And it's pretty fascinating. In fact, there was a large company, medical manufacturer that had an attack a couple weeks ago. Iran attacked them and basically wiped 80,000 computers, wiped them. There was no ransom. So normally there's a ransom. They just wiped the computers. They didn't want anything except to cause chaos. So we've got it's changing so rapidly. A lot of these cybersecurity issues happen. Somebody just grabs a phishing email, right? And check out this cool picture. You click on an attachment. We get emails constantly, and you've just got to really take a look at who the sender is. This is not cybersecurity advice. You need somebody that really understands cybersecurity. And this is not I've got this Microsoft Defender or some type of plug-in on my computer and that's enough. And also if you've got an IT person and IT says they've got it handled, I would think twice, or I'd ask a lot more questions. You need a cybersecurity company. We work with Black Talent Security. There are a lot of others in the industry, but they certainly that's all they do. And listen, it may be something that you don't want to invest in, but this is something you should be proactive and not reactive, because once it's happened, you're not only looking at whatever that ransom is, which you're probably going to have to pay. It's also the class action lawsuit that you're most likely going to have. There was just a breach, Midwest DSO. It's the fastest class action I've seen in dentistry. It happened in less than 3 weeks. The class action lawsuit came in. Also the downtime. Like you've got to take all those computers offline. How many practices are going to be down? Or even if it's one practice, you can do some things via paper for sure, but it's going to cause a massive, massive disruption. So it's not just how much am I going to have to pay, which normally it's like about $1 million a location. It's something crazy like that. It's the downtime. It's the loss in confidence. So, and again, not to scare people, maybe this is like, but it's a reality, and I think you should definitely be prepared. And it's crazy how sophisticated it is.
I wanted to finish with this because I think you started this episode with all of these, all of which are very exciting, can add a lot of value to the practice. But it is about where you are in the practice and what you can do now and what you may, it's like it's a want versus need. And I think on the cybersecurity side, like if there was one thing that a couple of things you're looking to do and you're on the fence of, whether it be from a cash flow perspective, and maybe you haven't put cybersecurity, and I think that's kind of what you're saying, which is, you can't do all these things at once.
Right.
And so you really do have to prioritize, but it is important to know that you will get to a lot of these. You'll be able to add some of these. And I think another thing that you and I've seen, Bill, in this industry, being here 20 years plus, is that, some companies come and go and some stay.
Yep.
And so if you feel like you're missing out on something, I think the recommendation to do a little bit of your homework is never a bad idea.
Right, and you can let Dental City they've already done the homework.
Yeah.
So I would say that, and also, leverage us as, a resource. You can go to, the groupdentistrynow.com website. I mean, listen to John and his podcasts and all the guests that he has on, because, I mean, the resources are all out there.
Yes.
I know it can be overwhelming. There's just so much information.
Yeah.
But, you kind of go to your point person at Dental City and start there, and then they can probably point you in the right direction, because there are so many great solutions. And
Yeah.
I'm high to your point. I think you got to check on your cybersecurity. You've got to kind of just check that box, whether you want to or not.
Yeah.
However painful it is, do that. Is it going to generate any more revenue in your practice? No, but
It's going to prevent you from losing a lot.
a lot. Yeah, a lot for sure. And membership plans, I think, are really exciting. And I think patient financing is another one. The tech solutions, the Diagnostic AI. I really like that Team Care with their platform that really can kind of incentivize your staff. It's pretty cool. There's so many great solutions. But yeah, just focus on one or two things. Where you're kind of have your holes or maybe your issues. We talked about outsourcing. Maybe it's that. Maybe you need like a half-timer somewhere, somebody to do like part-time work to maybe answer calls for you or do some of the, outreach for, past due, some collections work.
Yeah, awesome. Bill, this has been great. Hopefully very helpful for all of you. This is one of those podcast episodes where you kind of maybe watch over the course of the next couple of weeks. There's a lot that you shared.
I know, maybe too much.
Big
Don't want to
checklist.
overwhelm.
Well,
but
no, hey, listen, I think taking the time to summarize all this, I think, is helpful for as busy as the practices are. So be sure to learn more about Bill. Like I said, we'll make sure that we put all of the resources and Group Dentistry Now that him and Kim are doing. And until next time, I'd love to have you subscribe for Beyond the Operatory, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks, Bill.
thank you, John.